All right, welcome to episode 15 of the Total Hockey Training Podcast. And before I introduce my next guest, I just want to remind everyone Total Hockey Training 2 is out and available. And also the online training program, we are in season right now. That's at trainheroic.com. Total Hockey Training, and that is my program. And yeah, a lot of things on the fire. But today I want to introduce my next guest, a really good friend of mine. He's a legend in the field of strength and conditioning. He is Cal Dietz. Cal, welcome to the show, man. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing well, man. Thanks for
Good.
having me, and it's great to be here with you and good to catch up, buddy.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, so what do you got going on? Really quick, Cal is the head strength and conditioning coach at the University of Minnesota. Is it all Olympic sports still, Cal?
No, I just have men's and women's hockey. So
Okay, sweet. Sweet. Men's
yeah,
and
I
women's
dropped what
hockey.
10 of them. I dropped 10 other ones over the years, and now I'm just down to two now. So
Right, right. And if I'm correct, Cal, you've been there since 2001, correct?
that is correct.
Okay. And if listeners don't know, like me and Cal go ways back. Cal was the previous graduate assistant of strength and conditioning prior to when I got there. And Cal, I think you went to Findlay, Ohio.
Yeah, University of Findlay in Ohio to coach football,
Yeah.
coach wrestling, and strength training. About 10 hats, right? So
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And when I graduated, our previous boss, Brad Arnett, departed, and Cal took over for Brad, and man, that's 20, almost 23 years ago, right?
yeah, we're getting there, buddy. Getting there.
Yeah. No, but I
Uh,
mean, everyone knows Cal as the author of Triphasic Training, co-author, I should say, with Ben Peterson. Also, really big with RPR, reflexive performance reset. Cal's been kind of the guy who brought that to, I guess, the general public in a way. But I want to get into Cal, like the guy, the good buddy of mine. So Cal, like, tell everyone, what got you into strength and conditioning. I know you were a wrestler, correct, and a football player.
Yeah, I went to college. I wrestled and played football, and obviously at college at the University of Findlay was very fortunate. Won a few national titles there in both sports. Or anyway, I say a few, three total, but
That's
had
awesome.
great experience, right? Obviously, and I played for a legendary football coach. I think he ended up winning 5 or 6 national titles. I won 2 with him, senior captain, and then as a freshman. So I got to see it from multiple views, right? And then you're talking about a man, a legend that Dick Strom was his name, and
Yeah.
he I saw him take young men or young men and turn them into men that became, you go back nowadays and very productive fathers, and he had 100 guys on that football team, and you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And man, I remember I tell people one time I was like 310 pounds and benched well into the 500 pounds, right? And
Yeah.
that old man, I would sit in front of him, this 160-pound old man, and I'd still get nervous just out
Yeah.
of respect, right? That's the thing. Like, how could I be nervous? And right, I mean, I respected him, he respected me, but when he pulled you in the office, you're going, well, first thing you always thinking, what I
Mhm.
do, right? Like you're going,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah. Right. Right.
and then
Yeah.
uh, and then you're like, oh man, but it's not out of like intimidation. It was just out of sheer respect for this person, and
Hmm.
and he had his best interest in me, right? So that, and then I wrestled, which taught me a lot because I had a coach who was building a program from the start, and he'd been there a number of years, and it wasn't really a big program and then he turned it into a big program when we were always in the top 5 and 3, and then won a national title, the one year. So, so I tell people I was a roughneck wrestler at the University of Finley, but nobody wanted to be a roughneck. And then, we won a national title. So you got to
Right.
see different
Yeah.
aspects of coaching. And then, I was always into
Awesome.
training and looking. And then, I had an opportunity to come out here to Minnesota through some coaching connections and my just hard work as an athlete and the assistant coach, just kind of a student coach. So yeah, just hard work pays off, and it's always hard, right? It's supposed to be that
Hmm.
way, and I don't think people nowadays gather that I work hard. Well, that's the starting point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's the starting point.
That's a given, right? Hard work's a given. Should be, right?
That's the starting point. That's I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, I mean, as you know, with what we went through as in our job positions, right?
Mhm.
Where buddy, like uh Sean, like now there's 9 strength coaches doing the job of what 2 strength coaches and 2 GAs did
Mhm.
back in our day. Actually,
Right.
no, scratch that. That would include football. So you're actually talking about somewhere around, yeah, 9 to 11 strength coaches doing the job that when you were here,
Yeah.
2 GAs and 2 full-time guys. You're just like, this
Yeah.
is bananas,
But crazy, right? And
right? The amount of work that we did. And
a lot of
I
on
mean,
the floor coaching.
coaching like nonstop for hours a day, which was fun. And the thing is, you had to make it fun for me. Like I couldn't walk around, just like I had to interact with the alley. I couldn't just
Mhm.
be some soldier coach, right? I had to be like, hey, hey, and then like the kids, they work hard. I'd celebrate with them in regards to like, hey, this is successful workout. But then, hey, when they're running, you walk up to a guy, hey, you got to really focus on this, right?
Mhm.
And those kinds of relationships, and it taught me young to like just appreciate the interaction. You know what really taught me the interaction, how important it was to me, and I didn't realize it when COVID hit.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I was like, "Oh my." I didn't, I knew I enjoyed the interactions of people and the young athletes, but when COVID hit and I didn't get that every day, I was like,
Was
"Wow.
missing. Yeah.
Wow, how I don't take it for granted
Right.
now." Right? I
Right.
enjoy it every minute, right? So anyway, yeah.
Good for you. Well, you're talking about wrestling and working at the U of M and that accountability and that intimidation that wrestling coach had. Like, it makes me think about, as you probably had to endure, was like those 10 o'clock at night high intensity workouts at Beerman with Jay Robinson.
Yeah, Jay.
Yeah. And I remember talking about, you're talking about yourself and your coach. I remember the respect and admiration his athletes had for him.
Oh, yeah.
And one of those guys was Brock Lesnar,
Yeah.
and he was an absolute monster back then. He still is now. And that guy had him almost in tears, like just
Yeah.
because of the respect factor. And Brock, Brock could lift him up and squeeze him
Oh,
and
yeah.
kill him, but like no, like that's what I remember about those guys.
Well, right. Well, in the world of wrestling, but also, Sean, as you know, like some of the athletes you've coached that were just warriors.
Yeah.
There's a level of respect you have the second they walk in the room, right? I tell people, and in wrestling it happens a lot because if I even know that you were a college wrestler, like I'm like, all right, I know this guy has been through the paces, right? Every
Hmm.
college wrestler, and you're going, especially if you've made it through the whole program for 4 years, you're going, this guy has, I at least know that he's willing to work hard for in days, and there's days where there's no press, there's no nothing going on, right?
Right.
Like,
Right.
and that's the thing that I mean, I've trained some hard human beings, and then if you can, the fact they made it's one thing, right? And you and I both have, and I tell young coaches this, I've coached a ton of pro athletes, right? Whether it be the highest level pro in hockey or the lowest level pro or wherever they're at, but I've coached less professional athletes.
Hmm.
And when I say that, a professional, I've coached more college professionals than I have professional pro athletes that are professionals, because I say a pro athlete gets paid. A professional does what he's supposed to do when he's supposed to do it all the time, right? Like
Hmm.
I talk to our military individuals, and you talk to guys that this is what they do. They do it this way. They do the smallest thing the right way because there can save lives. Here we just
Hmm.
might lose a game or
Right.
not learn a lesson. But like and people look at me like, you've done a lot of pros but not many professionals. Yeah. And I've coached college kids that are professionals by the
Hmm.
time they're a senior. You know what I mean? We've got them to be, so they do everything they're supposed to do when they're supposed to do it all the time. And they are all in, right? And that's the kind of
Hmm.
stuff like, yeah, and then you see those guys, same person, same the women, 15 years later, you're like, yeah, this person is in their community. They're on, like, one track guy. He was on the hockey board. His kids played hockey. He didn't play hockey at a college level, obviously, but like he's in his community, he owns a business, has like 12 people employed. He is the real deal.
Mhm.
He's a
Mhm.
professional. You know me. You
Yeah.
would want to go work for that guy. That's the beauty of that
Yeah.
stuff, right? And where else can people learn these lessons besides athletics at a young age or the military? But
Right.
at a young age, you can learn a lot of good lessons in life to work with people too.
Oh, that makes me think about, working there at the U when we used to train the distance swim team, and these poor kids,
Oh,
they're at the door. It's foot of snow on the ground. It's -10, and they're gonna get their workout in, and then they're gonna go to the pool for like 2 hours. I remember a kid telling me, Sean, he's like, swimming isn't fun. Like he's
oh,
like, this is what I have to do. And
right.
yeah, and you're like thinking like, yeah, that sounds pretty painful. Like
Hey,
like it could just I don't want to
well,
jump into a hot pool right now. I want to go to my warm
I,
bed. So
well, you're like,
yeah,
what do you think? You're like the distance swimmers. They just grind it out. But then you even
grind.
take the sprinters, where like David Plummer trained here, was Olympic champion and I think bronze medalist. He would 45 seconds was his race. He turned himself inside out in that 45 seconds,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
he,
Yeah.
he turned himself inside out. So did the 400-meter runners and those 800-meter
Oh,
people.
yeah.
And so do hockey guys on a shift sometimes, not the whole
Yep.
game, right? But you're
Yep.
just like,
A
yeah, that's
buzzsaws.
good. Well,
Yeah.
when you left and then I came back, I think it was a year or so in between that gap. What happened was I come into Jay. This is a classic story. So Jay was fighting he wasn't fighting because he was a boss, but he kept circuits in, right?
Hmm.
And the coaches were like, Jay, there's better ways, blah 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 blah, and he had a purpose, and the circuits were fine. But like one of the assistants walked in, and he goes, it was Marty, actually, Marty Mitchell.
Oh
And
yeah.
him and I were chatting. He's like, yeah, we were just chatting with Jay. And Jay was like, the strongest kids in the country that walk in here are farm kids. And which isn't really always true, but like they always have great work capacity, right? So
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
then, and this is the first month on the job. And then Marty and I were laughing a little bit and we enjoyed it. But and we actually got Jay to listen. But later that day, Jay walks in and I hadn't like connected with him yet. And I was like, okay. And he goes, hey, Cal, let me ask you a question. I'm like, what is it, coach? He goes, hey, who's the strongest kids in the country coming out of high school? I said farm kids, right? And Jay goes, it's
So I
like he
told
loved
you.
me ever since. And then he actually listened to me about changing the training because I had
There you
some,
go.
but I
There you
used
go.
that information. That was classic, right? It was
That
so
is
classic.
Oh, that is hilarious.
And he
But
loved me for the next decade I worked with him,
yeah,
right?
I just remember those kids coming in. I shouldn't say kids because those wrestlers were
Grown men,
those guys. Those aren't guys who I want to like mess with it, by any means. I want them on my side, and
100%.
they would come in and they'd do like one set to failure, and they'd be screaming in agony and pain upstairs at that Beerman on the machines. But you know what? That's what Jay wanted to do, and that's what he was going to do, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, no,
It
let's
was good.
yeah, that's good. That's awesome. But yeah, let's talk about, your work with the Gophers. I mean, I know that I think the guys who were there when I was the guys who were like freshmen when I was there, great kids. I still see them today, like Leo and Johnny Pole.
Sure.
I'm like, those guys they're gonna win a national championship. And
They
they
did.
did. They did as a senior. Was that your first one?
That was, yeah. So I came in their junior year. We
Okay.
lost in quarters, I think. Yeah, or first round, and then they came back. They all came back. They could all, a majority of them could have went pro, and we came back, had a great summer, and they just put it together, right? The leadership that they had
Hmm.
between them, Johnny Poole, Johnny with Grandpa Tony was a captain too,
Right.
as a sophomore, right? And
First guy out of first recruit not from Minnesota, correct?
in a long time, yeah. Or
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not sure how long, but yeah, he was a North Dakota guy, and now he's coaching up in Northern.
Hmm.
So yes, yeah, it was great leadership. And, so young, I realized how good the leadership was, and it's crazy now. Even that team gets together. We just celebrated, obviously 20 years, a little bit back, but it's 202.
Hmm.
So you still see the respect that when they ever get together, you still see the respect that everyone has, even for the captains at that point,
Hmm.
and those guys, right? You're like, yeah, you still see it. You
Yeah.
absolutely still see it, right? And it's just
Yeah.
that team camaraderie that, hey, we came together to accomplish a task and we did it. right? That's
Absolutely.
the magic. And that's like the vision of athletics. At least for me, it was always like, playing football every week. The coaches make a plan. We go out and practice it and we'd execute it and make modifications during the game. And right, like that was the big thing where we,
Mhm.
we were able to execute. And then when you execute, then you have fun together, right? And enjoy it.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
Oh, absolutely. And so, and then there's a couple more after that. I know that, but we can get into all that. But talk about talk about your culture, especially with that hockey program. Um, living in Minnesota now, it's all you hear about is the Gophers, Gophers this, Gopher that. Even with the pro team down the street, it's a college hockey, college sport state still in a way.
yeah.
In my opinion, from living here. But I mean, talk about that culture of like getting into the weight room. Obviously, you've always been a forward thinker. Like back in like the early 2000s, whether it was at the time guys running with snorkels on or tape over their mouth. Talk about that forward thinking and how you were able to implement that into that culture and create that buy-in, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, I think what it is the biggest thing where I try new stuff and guys are willing to do it, and I'm like, guys, it might not help, right?
Mhm, mhm,
If we're working hard, it's going to do something, right? But it might not help for what I think. But I think they as long as the athletes know that you care, right? Because
mhm,
when I coach, I might not be like I'm not buddy buddies with all of them, right?
mhm,
And I don't feel I have to be as long as they know I care,
mhm,
right? And that's the thing. I think if athletes know that you care about them, you don't have to ultimately be buddy buddies with them, or they don't. I don't care if they ever if they like me to the extent where they text me, you know what I mean, ask me
mhm,
life
mhm,
problems, you know what I mean? If athletes know your care and you'll be like, okay, I see this for you today, and I think this could be a problem for you, and you explain it, and then they'd be willing to try new stuff that we were trying, and my whole education here in that process, these athletes have been part of it, and I thank them obviously when we do that. Like this summer, Sean, I was able to get you know well, everything extracted over probably around a quarter million numbers. That's how much
wow,
testing we ran. And I did it without being invasive, right? So you didn't even
right,
know it in the workout. And a lot of that came from 1080 methods, right? And there's
yeah,
just various things. So, but then, and we got so many numbers, maybe a few, many thousands, then I was able to multiply it by other numbers and blah, blah, blah. So, but the point is they're willing to do that because I think they just know that we care about them and we're willing to push limits and be open-minded too, and then get their feedback,
mhm,
right? So then you go, okay, and guys, I'm like, hey guys, if you see a new method, you bring it to me, and if I can fit it in at the right place, right time, we'll try it, right?
right,
So,
yeah,
they understand that, and that's what I actually said when I was young a lot. Right now, I have like 5 to 6 interns a semester, sometimes 8,
it's
and I tell
awesome.
them, "Hey, find new methods, and we're going to look at it, analyze it, and see what we can do." You know what I mean? So, right?
Yeah,
Because, I
yeah,
mean,
it
it's
it makes
crazy.
me, like, do you ever get into a situation where a guy's like, "Hey, Cal, this isn't working for me?"
Uh,
Like, all the time, or is it like
Yeah, well, when I was young, yes, now, but but
yeah,
but but Coach Sean, like Sean, now that you've made enough mistakes
yes,
to that I can kind of look at some and say, okay, I think this is good, or maybe let's just see what happens. I ran some tests on some things just recently. I knew it was going to work, but once we ran tests and found out what was going on, we could make it better with our knowledge, right? I used to tell
yeah,
people like I would say 1 out of 8 to 10 things worked when I was a young coach. Now I'm kind of down to 1 to 1, 1 to 2, whether they work or not. But
awesome.
I try less things. You know what I mean? Because I've already tried so
You
many
tried
things.
so many
Yeah,
so much stuff.
yeah, and all these fitness influencers, right? I like so people a little bit of my background. Like my weight room right now has $500,000 worth of testing equipment and training equipment. So
Mhm,
like I got 4 1080 sprints, right? Where it'll take power, force, speed every split second of the entire run when somebody's being towed or running, right? So I have, and I take numbers all summer, and then I have other devices. But I guess the point is like I look at some of these influencers or people that are saying, hey, this works out here. And then I actually try it and I'm like, I, I,
Yeah.
I just don't actually, it's really slow compared to this, or, you know what I mean? So
Yeah. Yeah.
I just got, and like, there's things that, and not that I get it right all the time. Like I said, I'll try new stuff that is like, okay, this can't possibly work for everybody. Now, it might work coming out of injury. It might work, you just got to analyze stuff to figure out when it's important to put it in. That's the
I love
biggest thing
that.
in my opinion, right? Like,
Yeah.
and Sean, and people ask like, how am I so creative where I create all this stuff? And I'm not creative. I question everything I've ever done. Like people out there question maybe what I do. And I'm going, well, no one's ever questioned me more than me. And I'm okay with being questioned. Because like my assistants that have questioned me have helped me develop the most. And
Hmm.
I shouldn't say me, but the whole system, right? So all
Yeah.
these athletes I've ever coached, they're part of my system, which I haven't released yet. They'll be next 3 to 5 years. But like people think you read my book, it's like 3% of what's going on here, as
Yeah.
you know, right? Like
Absolutely.
everybody, yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
just one book. So anyway, but you're like, everyone's been a part of this development. I can't take like triphasic's not just Cal Dietz. It's 30 assistants that are unbelievably
Yeah.
excellent. You know what
Hmm.
I mean? That whole deal,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
People that I've just conversations that I've had with people, but ultimately it's just, hey, I question everything I do, which then creates problems I didn't even know existed. And then what I do is I try to make solutions, and that's how I come up with new stuff. So my formula is question everything I do or hear, find, test it, find problems that exist, and then fix the solution, and then make the solutions for the problems. And that's how like things happen for me. So I
Love it.
just, somebody says, well, how's this come to your brain? I'm like, well, it's just a process. That's it. Right.
Yeah. No,
I'm not
that's
out
awesome.
doing acid or anything like that. Like people have said, right? Like, how did you figure that out? I'm like, well, it's just I ran this test, and I looked at both these. I'm like, oh, it's got to be this thought, and we
Yeah.
retested.
And you've been doing that a long time. Like you were working with the biomechanics lab 20 years ago.
Yeah, with force plates, right? I
Force
ran
plates, right?
right. I know
Yeah.
they're a big thing now, but like, and look, I would lie to you, Shawnee. Like, if I was the expert at the force plates when they came in, I'm still not, but I at least can read the data really well, right? And I had a bilateral. It was 20. They were 20 grand, 20 some years ago.
Yeah.
Data force plate that hooked up to a 9 camera system. So I mean, the Excel file that the
Huh.
biomechanics lab guy had
Spitting out.
hundreds of thousands of rows of information. I'm like, bro. He's like, no, I just sent you that for the raw files if you want it. I'm like, well, I don't, right? Like, well, I
No.
don't want them. But he
No,
was a
thank you.
right. He was a master's in oh, he was an engineer,
Oh,
and he was
they
a
can look at
spinal
that and see
engineer.
they can look at that and see something that
Well,
you and
they
I
can,
just can't
yeah.
decipher everything, right?
Well, they can break it down and put it in graphs. And he's like, well, like the stuff this kid showed me who knew nothing about athletics. He was like, Cal, actually, this is going on. I went, what? And then we made well, like that was part of the process there of creating triphasic, right? So I found it years ago where you need to learn to absorb all the force
Hmm.
before you can apply it. So he was like, hey, do you realize that all these graphs match up the the backside to the front side? So he's like, so you're kind of looking at this going, if this guy can apply a lot of force, he can stop it really quick, he said. And I went, well, it's a stretch reflex.
Yeah.
So then I was like, well, I got to break this down. Like, let's try to break it in blocks. So I trained eccentric, then I trained isometric in the same sequence, and then concentric, and things happened. I was like,
Yeah.
look what I stumbled upon, everybody. And then I tried to switch it up. I tried to do isos first and eccentric. And look, every method gets results, right? Every
Absolutely.
method gets results. I just got the best results from going 2 weeks of eccentric or three, whatever, 2 weeks of isos or three, and then the regular training, which could be heavy load or power training, whatever you want, or speed load, right? But that's the thing, right? And I even tried it daily before people wrote about it, like eccentric this day, isos. It just didn't work as well. I couldn't.
Hmm.
It worked, especially early in the season. But once you did a 2 week block of eccentrics, a 2 week block of isos with athletes, the next time you came to it, and if you tried to do it Monday eccentrics, Wednesday isos, blah, I didn't get the results. They actually got a little worse. But like everything works at the right time of the year.
Yep.
Right. But
Absolutely.
I tell people I do a GPP, large GPP circuit, right? At the beginning of the spring. So to show people I did this, Sean, I basically took a bunch of numbers in the spring right after the season, after they had their 2 weeks off, and everybody's bad, obviously. Well, that GPP, it's literally a 80 station circuit that they do in the weight room. After 2 or 3 weeks, I retested everybody and they got better at almost every quality, even the qualities they weren't supposed to, because and only doing this circuit. Okay. But then what happened that fall, and we go through 20 weeks of very specific training, right? So I do the circuit again at the end of the 20 weeks of very specific training when they're their fastest, they're their explosive. It's the end of summer training, right? So they're at their best, bud, right? So
Mhm.
then I do that same the same circuit. Everybody got slower at every or worse at every quality. Why? Because the circuit, when you're developed, is going to make you worse because it's not specific enough.
Mhm.
So that's a
Mhm.
prime example. If the circuit's done at the end of the year to restart your training cycle, it works really well for most things. But you do it at the wrong time of the year, like at the end of summer when everyone's their fastest, jumping their highest. It's not specific enough. There were no jumps in that circuit.
Right.
Right? So it's so the point is everything's going to work. You just got to figure
Depending on
out,
the time of year.
yeah, and when to put it,
Absolutely.
right? That's the thing, right? And when to put it. So,
It's amazing you're talking about your force plates and all that. Like, to be quite honest with you, I really struggle with the implementation during the season in the National Hockey League because yeah, I just constantly it's not me being like lazy or dumb. It's just a matter of like when could I use these things, the devices, we're in season mode every 24 hours.
oh,
Especially the last 2 years, with 3 years with COVID and trying to get, we were playing 4 times a week. You're not getting the stimulus that you would want to get. And if you're measuring, what are you going to do? Like, oh, we need to work on this. Well, we play in Winnipeg tomorrow night and Edmonton the next. Like, what are we doing here?
right. To your point, I'll give you a couple examples from, and I've never coached in the NHL like you, but the point is like you come off that plane and you come off the travel nightmare that the NHL is,
Hmm.
and the physicalness, right?
Hmm.
So it's not like there's only two really physical sports like that. Football is more violent, but in hockey is less violent, but it's not like basketball, it's not like baseball, right? There's
Hmm.
always but hockey is 80 games of contact,
Hmm.
right? That's the thing.
Plus the
And then
playoffs, like
oh,
playoffs are ramp it up by 50%.
50%.
Yeah.
Like, do you know how
Hmm.
hard it's Stanley like to make a team to that run?
Oh, it's brutal. It's
I
hard.
had two guys come back Vegas's first year. I had two guys on that team when they made that run and lost. And they came back after that, after a week, 2 weeks. They were, it was bananas how beat up they still were.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And
It's
they were
hard.
healthy. They were the healthy ones.
I know. Yeah.
Right. So I guess, but then let's just put that in perspective with the force plates. So you get a bad reading. Okay. And if let's say the reading, they need more eccentric strength. Well, when are you going to do that? Do
Yeah.
you know how hard it is? And we're not talking what's really going to change a force plate is a heavy eccentric load. Coach, you can't do that in season.
Absolutely not.
In an eccentric slow step down with 30 pounds in your dumbbells in your hands isn't the type of eccentric load that's actually going to change the force plate
Right.
right. You got to go
Right.
heavy,
You got to
right?
go
You and I,
heavy,
yeah.
slow. Yeah.
But what are you going to make the kid so sore that he can't
Can't play the
skate the
next
same way?
can't play the next game.
And then the problem is what I've seen now, and now that I've done my, I'm pretty 5 years deep into the level 3 RPR, where what I found was with the basically it's the muscle testing in that course, bud, is that I was able to see that, hey, why is this guy leg weak now and it wasn't 2 days ago?
Hmm.
Well, what happened is you got to run down the whole, like, what if he gets a puck in the right spot in his foot, that will shut down the whole sling running up and down his body. So
Hmm.
now you're going to get an eccentric reading on the force plate that his eccentric strength's bad. It's not his eccentric strength because he still has that. It's that whole sling is shut down. The brain says, I got a bruise. And that sling actually stabilizes the hip. So the hip is now not being stabilized correctly. So the brain down regulates its ability to absorb force. So he did not lose 20% of his eccentric strength in one day. He lost it because of a puck hit him in the wrong spot. It shut muscles off.
Mhm.
And now he can't. So really, it's a stability problem. And if you don't have stability, as you know, you can't generate force. So that's why the reading on the force plate's bad. But it's a false reading, right? The force plate's coming. Oh, you got to do more eccentric. You don't do more eccentric. You got to find what muscles are shut off from the puck that he took and is bruised from.
Or in a general overview of that, you're going to see right versus left difference.
That's exactly what you're seeing. Of
Yeah,
course, yes,
yeah,
because of the puck. Yes,
exactly. Oh,
and
that's awesome.
it's not a strength problem. It's one of those slings, like anatomy trains guy,
Yeah,
who am I talking
Thomas
about? Myers,
Myers.
Thomas
Yeah.
Myers, right? He shows you these slings. Well, you get a puck in one of those areas, it can shut that whole sling off.
Hmm.
So then you're like, that's a false force plate reading. So you're just gonna say, hey, he's weak, but he's not weak.
Hmm.
You
You
see what I
know
mean?
that. Yeah.
Right? So there's the layers that I've been able to and literally I do it because of my muscle testing skill set. Like I started that about 10 years ago, right? To
Hmm.
learn the muscle testing. And that's been so like in my gym now when somebody I don't coach running anymore. Because running is the greatest indicator to me of what is going on in the body, right? So and I'll give you this, like you can do an FMS and I think it's still a very good like assessment. But like the hip tights, well, let's say the hips are tight. I have found it's a lot of the foot problems
Hmm.
because then if the foot's not stable, then the body will go, I can't tighten down the knee, but I'll tighten down the hip. So it appears that there's tight hips. Well, the catch is that I found that if I get the foot fixed correctly, and that may take a few weeks with like the spring ankle exercises,
Hmm.
that's how I fix them really fast with training. But I've even seen chiros that do foot adjustments where lo and behold, guess what? The hockey boot locks those bones up.
Hmm.
I found chiros that can do those adjustments. Guess what? The hip flexor's unlocked. Now
Hmm.
because the hip doesn't have to stabilize the whole leg. The foot can do the stability part itself because it couldn't, not because it was weak, right? It was only because the joints were out of place. And when the chiros sent back, said, yeah, his foot was entirely like jammed up. Well, why? Because he had a hockey boot all
Hockey
the
skate.
time,
And
right?
a
Right.
lot of guys wear skates that are too small.
Yeah, because that's what they
Yeah.
do, and they should
Yeah.
probably. But so the point is, and what strength coaches have to realize, you are not like unless you're doing something egregious. I can't. You're not hurting somebody in the gym, most likely, right? Like it's not your fault. Like let's say, oh, he's got weak hips, his glutes. My program's bad. Your program's not bad. I guarantee it's how the human being is compensating. So like when I first found RPR, I was able to say, okay, these athletes walk in the door. I can now identify the ones that will most likely have knee problems, right? And here's my hopes with young coaches is like, don't think that because you're squatting somebody and they get knee pain, it's not the way you're squatting them, right? They brought those compensations in with them. I
Hmm.
can tell ahead of time that they're going to have knee problems, right? So hopefully you can fix it,
And usually
but
seeing in the foot, right? Most
right.
of the
Or
time.
a lot of times it can be the foot or the
Yeah.
hip, right?
Yeah,
So if the hips are
absolutely.
rotated, so you got to, well, the point to your point, coach, is you got to go down and up above the joint to figure out
Hmm.
run a check. And like I don't have that skill set always, but the trainers or other people will, Kairos, whatever it may be, right? So the point is these young coaches, I think people have got to realize that this is not your fault. I'll get back to Minnesota. When you were here, how many athletes did we train? Like
Oh,
I'm
a lot.
250 maybe between the Olympic sports,
The high,
300,
yeah, the higher entire. It was the men's athletic department back then. Imagine that.
right?
The
And
men,
so
just
250 to 300. So
yeah.
look, we have when I walk in, we're training. We had 700 knees basically somewhere in that area. Between one guy has two, obviously, and like two of the trainers got talking. Well, I got two guys with right knee pain. You got a few guys with knee pain. Oh, must be the weight room. I'm like, wait a minute. You
Right.
guys just came to me between the two of our teams, and one was track, one was baseball. So I'm talking. We had, well, was that there's 100 kids. I said, so we have 100 kids, and I got 4% of them with knee pain. And you think it's the squats I'm doing? Yeah. I'm
Right.
like, wait a
What
minute.
about the other?
What about the other 96 that aren't?
Yeah. Right.
Can
Yeah.
this kid have a problem that we don't know about? Can he's four?
Sure.
And I said, now I got 700 knees right now, and I got four with knee pain. Like,
Right.
so
Right.
it's me? Stop blaming the weight room. Stop blaming the weight room, right?
No, that's
It's
that's
just
hilarious.
bananas. Yeah. But that's, that's the envision of the medical people and the way they think sometimes, right? Well, there's gotta be
Sometimes
something, right?
the
But
weight
you're
room.
telling me my 16 reps on squat, because I didn't really even warm up that much on the squat. We'd done enough running. Like we just go in, jump in at 55%, then go to 70 and 80. And then you're like, 16 reps. But that kid went out on a 2-hour hockey practice and skated at unbelievable loads. You're saying that didn't do anything,
No.
right? But my, thousands
Yeah.
of reps on the ice in a day and during the week, and my 16 reps on back squat back then.
Yeah.
Come on, man,
Yeah,
right? It's like,
that has to be it.
hey,
So yeah.
your math ain't adding up. Your math ain't mathing, right? As they say,
No.
right?
Oh man. So hey, what are you doing today? Like what's going on now, Cal? Like what's next for you? I know, you mentioned RPR3. What else you doing? What else you got going on?
Well, it's just a lot of training stuff. Like I can, well, like I'll be honest. Like I think one of the best drills I ever created, Sean, it's called the GOAT drill. I don't know if you've seen it yet. The GOAT performance drill, I call it. So if people want to look up GOAT performance drill, and then if you want to see something that's magic, put Olympian behind it. I got a Olympian. Well, he's a young kid at the time, but now he's Brock Faber plays for a while. It shows him
Sure.
doing this drill. So this drill was brought to me by Dan Fichter, a coach friend of mine. He's unbelievable. And then he found a drill called the Infinity Walks. And the
Okay.
Infinity Walks are basically a PhD, Dr. Sandek is her name. She invented this, and really, it's a drill that you just do an Infinity Walk, and you can look up Infinity Walks, and then I just put Infinity Walks on steroids, no pun intended,
Mm.
on that, but and made it the GOAT drill because I put a lot of variance in it. But the point is that this lady created this Infinity Walk, which helped like behavioral kids, ADD kids. She's created clinics that are very successful that do these infinity walks, and it really just connects the right and left hemisphericity of the
Yeah.
brains, because they're not talking in those types of kids with behavioral problems. Okay, so then
Sure.
what I did, Sean, and if you look that up, GOAT performance drill, if you see, I gave 4 lectures on it, and you can see it progress over a 2-year period. The 4th one's the final and gives you all the information build up, so you don't have to watch all 4 if somebody's listening. But the point is coach, when I started doing this drill, I saw magic happen in kids that, like, when I say magic, just things that they couldn't do
Hmm.
well, something clicked in their brain. And when I say that, so really it's just a figure 8 drill. It started out as a figure 8, and you're watching an object on the wall. And what it does is, then what I did was, years ago, I figured out some things, and I had them, instead of just walking like the behavioral kids did, I had my athletes jog in a figure 8 circle with a ball moving around their hand. And then I had them do math, and they subtract from 103 or 102, subtract 3, and yell out math problems. Or yell out. So they go 101, 98, 95. And they don't even have to get the math right. Just got to do it fast. So what happens is, this is a brain drill that wakes you up, that wakes up your brain and connects everything. So literally, I've seen this drill turn on muscles that have been shut off in people. Why? Because I think it's just an instantaneous um, recalibrates the brain. So that's like, I've sent that out there. I mean, I get emails all the time about this drill. Coach, I had receivers that couldn't catch over this one side. They were great on, and then all of a sudden this thing connected them. I was like, great.
Wow.
That, you know what I mean? And really, so what you're doing is, when people use that drill, if you look it up, I do it before every workout. And the reason I do that is, I have found that the kids, if the brain's connected, because the brain is what makes the elite human elite.
Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm.
And then I'm like, well, this is an unbelievable fast brain warm up that literally takes 15 seconds to roll through. Well, it could take 10.
Are they
So
running?
yeah, they're
Jogging?
just running, doing it. So when you walk into my gym, like, Sean, I quit doing warm ups 2 years ago, 2 summers ago. I'm at the better part of 15,000 workouts with no warm ups. Why? Because I just found, once I train my athletes, beginning of the year, I'll warm them up till I get them trained, and then we just drop them. Because I was like, I don't think we need these. So we're talking Monday morning, 6:30. My athletes walk in, we start the workout at 6:30. They do 3 minutes RPR. They'll do one GOAT drill. And then my kids in a high velocity program are getting towed at 103% at 6:34 in the morning on the 1080.
Wow.
I haven't blown any haven't blown any hamstrings or Canuter valves yet. Okay. So anyway,
So how long's the go drill for? You say 3 minutes?
10 seconds,
10
10,
seconds.
16. Yeah, it's just real quick. And people
Wow.
want to look at it. Go performance drill.
I'm
Look
gonna
it up.
have to.
Yeah. I'll send you the link. I don't know if you're
Yeah.
going to post this on a website to link some. So then the thing is, and now, Sean, we've done as many experiments as we can. And I have a friend that does EEG. He put helmets on people to analyze the brain. He's like, Cal, this thing lights their brain up. And then it'll downregulate it really fast, which you want. So if you want to go do something, you want to light it up and then turn it way down. If it stays hyper, then that's not good, right? You're on too many stimulants, whatever it may be. But the
Right.
point is, I mean, I remember the first week I was trying this drill running. I had a kid, an athlete with a concussion 5 months ago, and he got sick. He got nauseous. So I realized that their brain hadn't recalibrated everything yet.
It's crazy.
So then I slowed him down. He just started walking, and in 2 weeks he was full tilt running. So, and you'll see this drill, and it's so simple because here's the deal. And what I've seen is just other things like, hey, they're doing an exercise or running, and they can't bring their knee all the way up. Well, now they bring it all the way up, right? And it just, I think it's one of the most athletic brain drills. And here's actually what's happening. I talk about it in our lectures real quick. To learn a new skill, and I want every young coach out there to realize what we're coaching is skills. Strength of skill, speed's a skill, power's a skill. Everything we are doing is literally a skill.
Mm-hmm.
So to learn a new skill, you have to have 3 neurotransmitters: dopamine, epinephrine, and acetylcholine. This drill, when you're doing that and you cause frustration because you think you should go faster or not go faster, it releases those 3 neurotransmitters. Now your brain's in a better spot to learn everything that they're coaching and do it better. So to really make you a better coach. So Sean, like I'll tell people, hey, before practice, look, especially a hockey kid, just look at those boards. Don't even need anything to go around. Just do a figure 8 while you're doing math and stick handling. You're done. Perfect. Do that 6 times. It'll connect your right and left brain to really dial in really fast. And your hands will seem better. Okay. You take a
That's
look at it.
awesome.
Yeah, I mean,
I
that's
will.
just like one thing that I put at the beginning of my workouts. And so when you see Brock Faber do it, everything, Sean, there's pieces of material on the floor. There are hurdles he's running over around the big circles. There are people in the circles blocking his vision as he's trying to watch that one object over there. So there's all these things that are causing frustration. And the one thing, the crazy thing about like the things on the floor, and we're talking they're little just gym mats cut up like quarter inch. When people started doing that drill, they were doing it slow and they had bad heel strikes. So Chris Corfus, my coaching friend, said, Cal, throw down these little pads and they won't have a bad heel strike. And he was dead right. I didn't have to coach it. I just threw pads around the floor. The brain goes, oh, I could slip on something. So now I'm going to land on the forefoot so I can catch myself.
Oh,
so it's a trick.
Wow.
You're tricking these kids into running on their forefoot, right? So
yeah, right.
those are the kind of things. Yeah. And I basically put this drill, which is essentially walking. Now, here's a great one for young kids. I had a buddy, long story short, 2 athletic parents, daughter's 10 at the time. And it was grew super fast and was like clumsy. I'm like, 2 great parents, athletic. And I'm like, what? They sent me video. I was like, so she started doing this and they would have her watch TV while reading the subtitles because they were like, well, it's better than just watching TV. But they'd have their do the infinity walks, 10 minutes, 3 times a week or 2. And guess what? Her hemisphericity's connected. And all of a sudden, this athletic girl shows up about 6 weeks. Yeah, because during that spurt, like things just got disconnected and she had to.
Right.
And that's it. So think about it, Sean. Nowadays, with these remote control, the wireless remotes, if your kid's going to go play video games, make them do infinity walk for 20 minutes before they keep playing. I'm telling you, because think about the amount of stuff going on in that video game and that you're connecting the right and left brain together. I think it could be it's magic. I got friends that are doing it right now. So it's interesting. Awesome. Yeah, that's
kind unbelievable.
That's awesome, really man. Good. That's I'm waiting for people to actually analyze because we actually analyzed. I have a friend that ran all the force plate stuff on it, and he was like, Cal, he had people go from 78th percentile to 80th percentile when they did 1 rep, which was 10, 15 seconds. Now they're in the 96th percentile in their balance.
Come
So
on.
really, it just synchronizes
Wow.
stuff. You know, it just
That's awesome.
synchronizes them. And like, Sean, do you need this? Why do humans need this drill? I don't think humans that move all day outside have to look at the ground when they walk and move and watch their whole surrounding would have to use this drill because they're doing it all day. But the sedentary
Athletes.
humans that we are on a
Yeah.
daily need this drill. Everybody needs this drill.
It's awesome.
It's
That's
just
great.
simple too. So
That's
Sean,
great.
what I'll do for young coaches, I'll do that one rep, and then let's say I'm having them run a pro agility.
Yeah.
And then they come back during the rest period, which is 30, 40 seconds. They do the goat drill again. And when they run, they're going slower, right? You can't do all that math and run super fast. The
Sure.
one you see on my YouTube video, if you look up the Olympian goat drill, those are the fastest two cats I've ever had doing it. Okay. Those are the fastest two. So it's not, you just have to do it. And that's what I do during my rest period. And let's say before, most times I run between 5 to 6 sprints every day. And usually that's 20-yard dash, pro agilities, like excels, whatever it may be that day. I run every day before I lift, no matter what, 6 reps, 5 to 6. They do a goat drill in between. And that's just stimulating the brain before they go into the gym and during the running. Like, so Sean, we'll have the 1080, which is a $20,000 device that I can measure these sprints. We've literally had kids run a 1080, 2 1080s, and then do the goat drill, and everything is more powerful, smoother. Why? It's just finally connected everything in the brain. And the brain's the key, right? The brain is what makes people like, look, you can have somebody that's freaky, super fast twitch fibers. If they don't have a brain to control it, it doesn't matter. They're not a good athlete, right? They may be powerful, but they're not. Well, I think a power lifter will have, there's power lifters that you see that have to have fast twitch fibers, right? But are they very athletic? They haven't developed that thing, right? Some of them, you know, and that's the crazy thing about sometimes powerlifting, right? Look, I've squatted 1,000 pounds, right? I squatted 1,000 pounds. Now I can teach you to be a strength coach. Wait a minute, buddy. Like, I just watch you walk. I don't have one Olympian or pro athlete that walks like that. I said, I have matter of fact, I know since you squatted 1,000 pounds, I have a whole team of women that will smoke you in a 20-yard dash because of the way you're walking right now.
Yeah. No,
I'm like, I don't want to learn how to, like, I want a female, like, I don't back squat.
athlete. Right.
Yeah, I don't back squat because I just found better returns. Like my safety bar single leg squat, right? Over the years. Well, let's take this example. I have a beast of a female, and she was 150 to about 148. She didn't want to back squat. She wouldn't back squat more than 225. And she didn't want to. She didn't like anything over 185. But she would do a single leg safety bar back squat with 365 on one leg, Sean. Right?
That's pretty strong.
Yeah, right. And she would do that. And she was a beast. She was an absolute beast. And you know, and yeah, I keep my foot on the floor, right? And people think I don't like the rear elevated squats. No, I do. It's just with that heavy load, I found it kind of can take their hips out of place with the heavy load. So if she's doing 365 or 315 for a female, now I got men doing 600 single leg. I had one thrower do 800 at one point. So, and I know a football coach that's got some guys doing 1,000, linemen that are doing 1,000. Those are 330-pound men though.
Oh,
right. Yeah.
Yeah,
So like, that's not surprising. But the point is, but I just found for people, I kept my foot on the ground and I didn't like, with that heavy load, it didn't torque their hips. Now I do rear elevated with lighter loads, right? Because, and I'm talking like 400 to 600 pounds. I don't do that. You know what I mean? When I get to that heavy, I just put that foot on the ground. You know what I mean? And it was only because actually the first day I did those, the chiro came in the next day and I walked in. He's like, hey man, everybody's kind of tilted and things are kind of messed up in their hips. I said, well, I might know the reason. So let's just, because I did it with the rear foot elevated, right?
Sure.
So, and I can't confirm this whole thing, but I just was like, well, I'm going to listen to the chiro. We're going to put the foot on the ground. And then we didn't have any problems after that. So I was like, yeah. That's just common sense. Like, I'm just like, well, it's just common sense, right? Just do what's, right. You know, so I still like the rear foot elevated, right? It's a very good lift. I do it, you know, we'll do it in power zones, but again, with the safety bar on your back, I just could put the foot on the ground.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, hey buddy, I want to do a part 2 with this sometime. What do you think? Yeah. We can go on and on.
We can keep going, man. Yeah. We got between us, how many 100 years of coaching? Probably are almost like, right?
A lot of good stories.
Yeah, they're great, man.
Yeah, I want to end this segment here though. and I'm gonna get you on again, buddy.
Okay,
And
no problem.
hey, thanks for coming on, Cal.
Hey,
And
it
I'll
was a
set it up.
pleasure.
We'll get a part two and just get inside your head a little bit more. And
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
sure
yeah.
listeners are really gonna appreciate this, buddy.
Yeah, yeah. Great having me, man. It's always good to
Yeah.
catch up. Maybe part two, we'll do it at night. We'll have a couple beers before we get on.
Well, hey, buddy, I'll see you on Saturday.
Yep.
And I look forward to seeing you. And we're gonna set this up again for part two.
Yeah, anytime, buddy.
All right, man.
All
Have a
right,
good
brother.
day. See
You
you,
too,
Cal.
brother.
Thanks
Bye.
again.